Good evening and welcome to ongoing coverage of municipal budgets and elections here on Channel 17 here in Burlington, Vermont, serving the entire Chittenden County area. My name is Howard Wood and I'm your moderator tonight, and we're going to present to you the South Burlington City Budget. I'm very pleased to have with us the Deputy City Manager, Tom Barritt, is with us tonight, and he's going to be presenting the budget. Tom, this is the first time we've gotten a chance to meet, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation. I'm a brand new South Burlington resident, actually, and so I'm very curious about it. I've always admired the community, and now being a part of it, I can't wait to hear your presentation. Great. Where would you like to start?
Well, we can start. I guess I'll start by saying I'm hoping that Councilor Tim Barritt will join us.
Yeah, we are too.
And we'll see if he comes in, but if not, we'll certainly keep it going.
And certainly, if there are people watching that want to know how they can participate here, there is a telephone number they can call in and ask questions directly. That number, by the way, is 862-3966, and you can call anytime. We'll take the question, and we'd love to have some participation out there. Great. So tell us how, maybe you want to start with how this process starts and where we end up.
Sure. So it's a long process, really. We start looking at the budget in the fall and begin meeting with department heads to really try to determine what the needs are going to be for the upcoming year, especially the capital items, things that would be more in the 10,000 and above kind of range. And we start working through that process, and that's one of the things I'd like to talk about tonight, because the capital improvement plan is such a major part of any of our municipal budgets.
So explain what capital improvements are, so
sure.
People want to
know. So
these
would be things like replacement of a dump truck, a plow truck at Public Works, the number of police cruisers that we'd be replacing in a year.
Big ticket items, kinds of things.
Big things, an expansion of a garage unit at Public Works, and those kinds of things. So they're pretty significant dollar values. And when the council, you have a sense of where their sensitivity is in terms of what they're comfortable with for an increase in the tax rate, which we all are sensitive to. And when we start plugging in a figure of where we are initially in the fall, and we look at, say, a couple $1 million increase over what we had last year, we know that that's not realistic. Right. And we have to start looking at what projects can be deferred to outer years, which projects might be able to be funded with the current city budget. And then, what other alternatives do we have in terms of looking at these expenses in a way of what do we definitely have to have this year? What would be nice to have this year, and kind of dividing it up into that kind of a category, and really arriving at a place that's reasonable and affordable. And
how many changes do you think that you go through in that process?
There's so many significant line items in the budget. There are a lot of changes, and I would say it's probably easier to describe it as about 5 significant drafts of the entire budget. And by the time we get to the final draft, we're into about mid-December. Yeah. And that goes to the city council at that point, and we begin having public sessions with them in January, early to mid-January, sometimes one night, sometimes several nights of just kind of going through, having the department managers come in, talk about their budget, what the priorities are for them, what the big differences are over the past year, what their needs are, to help the council better understand, what are some of the numbers in the budget, what do they mean, and are we going to be able to make it work? So we went through that process. January 13th, the council adopted the budget that will go to the voters for town meeting day. And maybe I could get into some of what those numbers look like.
By the way, before you get started, how long have you been with South Burlington?
This is my 41st year.
41st year, yes. Wow, goodness gracious. So you
different
have the history.
But
You have the history behind you. You know how far this has come, and how and I've seen the changes that have occurred.
Yeah, a lot of years here. Really enjoyed working and living in South Burlington, having all our kids grow up through the school district.
Amazing,
and it's been very rewarding.
So just before you get started, What's the biggest thing you've seen change over those years?
I think the most exciting thing is probably the development of Market Street.
Okay.
Because when I came in '79, it was just before they started talking about what would South Burlington be like to have a downtown.
Yeah.
And by about the mid-'80s, we were seriously planning for that process.
Wow.
And to actually see it kind of come to fruition now is really exciting.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, show us what you prepared.
Sure. So I think I'll start by just looking at what some of the major considerations were as we put the budget together. I've already kind of indicated that we're sensitive to whatever increase we may need to keep the budget going. And when we look at sensitivity, we look at what's it going to take to keep the current level of service, without cutting back on anything. What numbers are we looking at to be able to maintain what we're currently doing? We have 3 different unions in South Burlington, so we need to make sure that we meet what all the contractual obligations are of those contracts. We need to certainly meet all our bonded debt obligations. Support for the capital improvement plan, which I talked about, and I have a few slides on that we can look at as we go through. Fund the annual assessments and support to other entities. That includes organizations like CCTV, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, Green Mountain Transit,
of course,
the county court system, those types of things. And then continued support for council initiatives. And some of those include affordable housing, energy consumption, more money for paving. Anybody that's driven down Dorset Street understands we need to be putting more money into paving, especially the winter we had last year. And we're having the kind of same winter this year in terms of the amount of salt that's going on the road. Even though we haven't had huge significant snowstorms, the roads have still taken a pretty good beating.
Wow.
And then continued stewardship of our facilities. So all things that are on the minds of the council members. So as we look at the numbers, the biggest number at the bottom is the $57.2 million, and that's the number that goes on the ballot, but I want to really indicate, the importance of what the other numbers are. The $57.2 million is comprised of the general fund, which is the number funded by the tax dollars. It also is comprised of $19 million in special funds that were set aside for specific purposes, including City Center, that kind of reside outside the general fund, and then $12 million of funding in our enterprise accounts, and these are water, stormwater, and sewer for South Burlington. So you add those all together and it looks like a big number. So as we break it down a little bit, we look at the top number here, the $26.6 million roughly. That's the total amount of expenditures in the general fund. We can offset that slightly, just over $9.6 million with some revenues that we have coming in. This includes money from like the local options taxes, fees that we collect, and those sorts of things that really leave us with what's the amount of money that we need to fund by tax dollars. That's the $16.9 million number that's up there that we call the tax levy. That's an increase of just over $500,000 from last year. It's just under a 3% increase overall at 2.98%, about a little over 1.5 cents, giving us a tax rate of 0.5542. Some of the, we talked a little bit, Howard, about what's the process that you go through when you're putting the budget together. And as we looked at the increase in the capital improvement plan over what it was last year, that was a $1.4 million number. So it's pretty significant. So what you see in blue here are some of the things that we did to kind of cut back that number to make it a more affordable capital plan. So we moved the replacement ambulance, which was a significant cost, over $400,000, to an outer year. The ambulance we have is still in pretty good shape. We cut back some of our annual fleet requests. Some of the trucks we're replacing, some we're holding on to for another year or two. We're utilizing some impact fee money for some of the projects, moving some projects to outer years like I discussed. We cut some of the city center reserve funding. We now know what it's going to take to keep things going, so what was an $860,000 number has been cut back to a $750,000 number.
Nice.
Still going to be able to meet our debt obligation from that. The City Council cut more than $500,000 out of the CIP, the improvement plan, before it went before them again to look at the operating budget. And then we funded several projects with current fiscal year money, FY20 funds. We met with all the different department managers, reduced the general fund that was proposed with expenses of more than $100,000. So just to bring some of these down, and again, looking at what do you really need and what might be nice to have this year that we might be able to do some of, but not all of, that type of thing. Some of the major items in the capital improvement plan that were significant in terms of their dollar values. Paving is definitely up there for us at number one. So we've approved a $750,000 number for that, along with some state grant monies that are going to bring the paving number just under $1 million worth of paving. It's almost double what we had about 3 years ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so it's a significant improvement in the funding for roads, and I think we're going to continue to increase that over the next few years, because I think that's probably the dollar value that's more realistic in terms of taking care of the paving needs that we have. The tree care is becoming more significant. I'm sure you've heard about the emerald ash borer.
Yep.
All communities are addressing it in different ways. One of the things that we're doing is replacing the trees. So the cost of $100,000 in the budget this year is both for the removal of some of the trees and the replacement of the trees.
What would you estimate? How many emerald ash ashes do we have?
You know, that's a great question, and I should know that answer. Just if Justin was here, he could tell us exactly. It's significant.
It is,
because they're in most of our parks and they're along a lot of our roads. Yeah, and so there's, I want to say it's more than 500.
Yeah, wow.
So it's a significant amount of trees. And so we're taking a bite at that.
And what do you know what they're replacing them with? You know?
There's about 4 different tree species that they're utilizing.
Nice.
And some that are more quicker growing than others, but it's a way to fill in the spaces that are going to be created.
I know it doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but I'm curious.
Yeah, but the cost sure does.
Right.
You know, and all communities are being faced with this because it's already in Vermont, and it's not a matter of you know, when's it going to come, or if it's going to come. It's when it's going to be here. So fleet replacement, again, we talked about a number of vehicles that need replacement, both with the highway department, also police cruisers. We have 3 cruisers that we're replacing this year, and 2 big vehicles at Public Works. Some of the building improvements that we're looking at is a new security equipment system for the outside of the police station over at Gregory Drive, and a new roof for the Wheeler building up at Dorset Park. That's a big brick building that sits up near the front of the street. And some of the parks improvements that we're looking at for this year include some court improvements, bleachers, and lighting up at Vet Memorial, and some additional court surfacing improvements at Szymanski Park down in the south end. There's a lot of expense factors that we could identify, but some of the major ones certainly include the projects, some of which we've already talked about in the capital improvement plan. Our health insurance cost is a big number. They went up 10% for us this year. I think most communities around us are looking at a double-digit increase in health insurance costs. The agreements that we have with the collective bargaining units, we have a new position in parks maintenance, partly because we've added some additional parks that we need maintenance for, and we've got some more specialized areas that need some additional treatment, as well as taking care of some of our open space properties.
I know that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue, is the open space. You know, there's now a plan that's kind of put in place, and various things are going for that.
Yeah. And along with the additional parks staff person, we have 2 adjustments that we're making with the library staff. The public library, as you know, is going to be located over on Market Street. It's currently in University Mall.
That's right.
And we're looking to build up the staff to be able to operate the new building.
When do you anticipate that
I think
couple
the
years?
best case right now is probably late summer of next year,
Oh,
so
next year,
2021. So they're literally pouring the concrete now.
Great.
And they'll work throughout the winter. Not the ideal time of year to work, but they'll continue to make some progress. And I think if we stay on track, it will probably be sometime late summer of 21.
Let me interrupt real quick just to remind viewers that if you want to call in a question, we'd love to get a question. If you have anything you want to ask Tom about, the number is 862-3966, and you can call in with any question. We'd love to have some questions about it. You know, the vote is coming up, so we'd love to get your participation. Keep going.
Sure. The reason we have a note on there for adjustments for the library staff is that there are two positions that currently exist at 28 hours. We're looking to bring them to full-time equivalent positions at 40 with benefits. So they're not totally new positions, but just kind of an increased service there. The stabilization fund is something that our auditor has been recommending for years, so we have a dedicated amount of money that we place onto the balance sheet at the end of the year. So this is different from a contingency fund.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
It sounded like it's...
So the contingency fund is more, you have an expense that comes up that you don't have money budgeted for, and you need to take it from somewhere. The stabilization fund, you try not to hit at all. So unless there was an absolute emergency that necessitated the use of that money, like any emergency you might have to bring money in off your balance sheet. This is for money to be dedicated to be placed onto the balance sheet.
Okay.
So currently we have about $1.3 million on the balance sheet, and our auditor would like us to be more in the low twos.
Okay.
So we're taking an effort to work towards that number. We have about 21 days of operation right now that barring any emergency we could operate the city with. So we'd like to get that to 30 or plus days. So that's the effort there. We have 3 elections next year. So
Go through those.
Fiscal year 21.
The cost of those alone,
Right.
is significant.
So we have the August, then we'll have the November election,
Right.
which will be a big one, and then we'll have the March town meeting again. So 3 elections fall within the fiscal year. Equipment maintenance and repair continues to be a big expense factor for us. We have an increase in the community outreach program. I'd like to talk just a little bit about that.
Yeah, explain what that is.
We've partnered with our surrounding communities to provide mental health counseling with our public safety staff. And through Howard Mental Health, they've been able to recruit a great team of people that work with our police officers and our ambulance crew, our firefighters, to address mental health needs within the community. And we actually have one of these members embedded with our staff in South Burlington, and it's been a huge success. The way that the funding for that had been factored was based on population. I think after this first year of operation, we realized it might be a fairer way to do it by call volume. And we have significant call volume in South Burlington. It was a fair redistribution of the funding for that program. So we have a slight increase in that program for this year. And
so the need was larger than anticipated.
More than substantiated, absolutely. In fact, we started with a staff of 4 counselors for the municipalities in the region, and we now have 5. Yeah. We talked about some of the building improvements. You know, winter can be tough on us. Like I said, even though we haven't had a lot of snow, we've used a lot of salt already, and we did last year. And the price of diesel is going up as well. So, you know, when I throw winter salt in there, that's a $30,000 increase over last year. Really? It's not a small number. Yeah. So the reason it's on here is that's pretty significant. We have a landscaping contract this year where we're looking to bring a firm in to help us with more intricate areas like Wheeler and City Center Park, which have a different kind of care. You know, it's not just the general kind of maintenance. So we're looking to hire a firm to come in and do a bit more landscaping to keep those properties looking well. Medical equipment and supplies continues to be an expense factor for us, both in terms of fitting up the ambulance for the equipment that we need, being able to keep our paramedics certified, and also just the amount of disposables that are used. So as our call volume increases with our ambulance service, and for us that's over 85% of calls that come into fire and rescue are ambulance calls within South Burlington. So significant.
What is the population increasing, right, in South Burlington?
Yeah, we're just over 19,000.
Yeah.
Yep. And
as opposed to other communities where it's kind of going down in places, South Burlington continues to see increases in those areas.
And we're also a pass-through community, and we have a lot of people that work here during the course of a day. So there's a lot of factors that kind of substantiate that kind of a rise in the number of calls that we have. The public safety overtime, this is a balance of trying to right-size our police department at the time, and right now filling vacancies and overtime, with our current personnel, and trying to determine, do we need additional staff to make that work more efficiently, and to also balance what the contract agreements are for minimum staffing. So always the challenge, but those are things that we continue to look at. Other insurance costs, aside from the healthcare insurance, which is our biggest, just looking at things like property and liability, our group life insurance, long-term and short-term disability, those types of things, about $88,000 number in other insurance increases there. We talked a little bit about the funding assessments, and there's a lot of initials up here, but basically we're looking at the Winooski Valley Park District, Front Porch Forum, CCTV, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, all had slight increases, not substantial, but these are all assessments that we have. Regional Planning and County Court fee that we pay decreased slightly, and Green Mountain Transit, we had a slight increase, which was good because we initially thought it was going to be more significant than it was. But if you look at what our total assessments are at the bottom of the page there, we're about $800,000 in assessments, and over $500,000 of that is GMT funding alone. So pretty significant. This is just a chart that demonstrates a little bit more about where the different expenditures go. You can see that police is a pretty good chunk of that. They're also our largest department, just over 50 members, and the largest facility that we operate with staff. So just a little graphic there, so you can see some different percentages.
Over your years, that's really kind of been the way
it has. It's been very consistent.
Very consistent in that way, yep.
And fire and ambulance are listed out separately, but it's really a combined unit over there. So let's look at some of ways revenue increased to help us out, so that the tax increase didn't need to be as substantial as it could have been. We are looking at, conservatively, a growth in the grand list of about 1%. We think it might be a little bit more than that, but we want to err on the safe side. Our local options taxes, the LOT, we're looking at increased revenues both from the rooms and meals and the sales tax. If we look at what our FY19 actuals are, that was about $4.5 million with the two of them combined. Wow. We, in South Burlington, are able to operate both a fire and an electrical inspection program rather than having the state do it, and that gives us some increased revenue by doing it ourselves. I think it also provides a timely, more timely, expedites the process for people wanting to have work done and not having to get on the state schedule, and having our inspectors go out locally and work to make things happen. The recording fees in city clerk's office are increasing. The state passed a bill last year that allowed folks to go into any town clerk office now and get records. Copies of records, whether you needed them from Burlington or Essex. If you wanted to come to South Burlington to get it because you were passing through, and we've seen a significant uptick in the collection of our fees there.
It makes a little sense, doesn't it? With a lot of people working, they can get it done right there.
It does.
That's interesting, yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
We've got increased revenue from road permit fees that are going to help us this year, as well as planning and zoning, P&Z permit fees. Our ambulance revenue, this is the collection of monies that we send out from billing for rescue calls. We have some retiring debt on the police station fit up of the second floor. That's where the Community Justice Center operates out of, and the community room we have there. And then some additional interest income from the banking services. Some of the other sources of revenue are the special funds that we talked about, where we could utilize those, like the energy fund, and I have an example of that as we go through the slides. The budget includes the use of some grant money and some impact fees, like we're going to be putting in a dog park, so that will help us there. And then the use of allocation of open space money, the communications bond, penny for pass. And you can see here just where the biggest revenue source, obviously, the property tax, but local options also pretty significant there. Here's a look at what our different city services are. On the left, all funded by the general fund, the user fees over on the right. These are all the different services. Some of our continued initiatives here with energy projects, grants, stewardship. You know, you can see them up there. I know we're running short on time,
Yeah,
so
a little bit.
I'm going to kind of hustle through these a little bit. But we do have some energy projects that we're doing this year and next year that are going to save our taxpayers some money without increasing their taxes to do them. And probably the most important slide here, what does this mean to me? So if we looked at the proposed budget and the increase on an average condo and an average residence, we have about a $37 increase for a condo and a $54 increase for a home.
Okay.
And you can see the breakdown per month in terms of costs there.
And if people have questions about this, in case we run out of time, they can get this online right at the city site.
They can, yes, and maybe I'll just leave that slide right up there. So we'll be sending out postcards to let folks know that our budget booklets are available if they'd like to have one mailed.
Perfect.
But they're on our website. They're available at City Hall and at the public library, and they can feel free to contact us.
And can we get a shot of the Market Street?
That would be great.
Because Tom brought this, and this is a huge thing that has happened this year. Maybe you want to talk about it.
Sure. So shortly ago, we had a combined opening of both the Market Street, the reopening of Market Street, which I know people are happy to see, as well as the groundbreaking for the new community center building, which will house our City Hall, our senior center, and the public library. So I just thought I'd share a picture of that. So just some pretty exciting things happening.
Well, if you haven't driven down through Market Street, you need to go through there. It's really remarkable. It's beautiful. It's not finished. I mean, there's still a lot of interesting things that are going on there. But if you haven't gone down it yet, you'll see some beautiful buildings. It's a beautiful road, and the park that has been put in there is just gorgeous. I can see it's going to be a very popular area for people to walk and get to stores and various things.
It will be.
We've got about one more minute. What do you have that you want to just make sure that people know?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. We're going to be doing some advertising in the other paper. You know, I think a lot of people look to the other paper as our local paper to kind of get a better feel for what the budget means, what the numbers mean. So we'll be running some different ads in the paper that will direct people to our website where they can look through the entire budget. They can certainly call the manager's office, our finance office, with any specific questions that they have. And the whole budget booklet, which is currently being printed up right now, will be online probably tomorrow.
Oh, good.
And it has both the city and the school budget
and mailed
information.
Out very soon.
It will be mailed out to whoever wants the full copy of it. So the postcard will be basically to tell people, if you want the whole booklet, we're happy to mail it out to you.
Or they'll mail it out.
We're finding that most people look at it online. Yeah. And we'll also have copies at the pre-town meeting night on March 2nd, where again, we'll go through this process, both the city and the school, and have our candidate forum the same night, and then town meeting the next day.
That's great.
So.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm
Yeah,
so glad.
thank you, Howard.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And 41 years. So, are you going to be here for another 10 or 15? No, you got
I won't say it's that long. Sooner than later.
Yeah, well, that's
but I
great.
really enjoyed it.
It's a pleasure to meet you, and
Yeah.
certainly I think the people of South Burlington know they have a great resource. All they have to do is call your office, and you'll get the information.
Yeah.
So again, we want to thank you for watching, and you can find us online. You can find us at channels ch17.tv, or you can go to cctv.org, and this program and so many others are available to you. So I highly recommend that you go to it, and I appreciate Tom being here tonight, and we'll see you next time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.